I don't even know where to start with this. I'm sitting here I am typing this because I literally can't sleep anymore and I need to get this out before I lose my mind completely. 6 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. I was 7 months pregnant with my daughter. My husband Mark and I had been married for 3 years. He was a software engineer who made good money, and we lived in a nice house in the suburbs. His family was close, like really close, maybe too close. His mother Susan would come over 3 times a week and his sister Rebecca lived 20 minutes away, and we'd have dinner with her every Sunday. They were nice to me, or at least I thought they were. I genuinely believed they loved me and that I was part of their family. Looking back now, I was so fucking stupid. But at the time, everything seemed perfect. It started so small that I actually thought I was losing my mind. I was 8 months pregnant when I went to renew my driver's license. The woman at the DMV looked at my paperwork, looked at me, typed something into her computer, and frowned. "Ma'am, you already renewed this 2 months ago," she said. I laughed because obviously there was some mistake. "No, I didn't. It expires next week," I told her. She turned her screen toward me and showed me the record. "See? Renewed on August 3rd. I stared at the screen in confusion. That was my name, my birthday, my address. But I had never been to that DMV in my life. "There must be a mistake," I said. But she just clicked a few more things and said, "We have your biometrics on file from that visit." My stomach dropped right then and there. "What biometrics can?" I asked, and she explained that it was facial recognition and fingerprints, standard procedure now. I asked her to show me and she hesitated, but then turned the screen again. There was a photo of me. I mean, it looked TXACTL while like me, same hair, same face, same everything. But it wasn't me. I had never been there. I started breathing hard and the baby kicked inside me. The woman asked if I was okay and I said, "I need you to check something. Please." "That's not me. I was never here on August 3rd. I was at a doctor's appointment that day. I can prove it." She looked uncomfortable and said, "Ma'am, our system doesn't make mistakes with facial recognition. That's your face." I demanded to speak to a supervisor. The supervisor came and it was the same story. They showed me the security footage and there I was, walking into the DMV, sitting down, smiling at the camera. But it wasn't me. I know my own body. I know how I move, and this person moved wrong, held her shoulders differently, her smile was off. But her face was mine, perfectly. "This is identity theft," I said. But the supervisor sighed like he'd heard this before. "Ma'am, with all due respect, the facial recognition software is 99.9% accurate. That's you in the video. It's NOT," I insisted. But he suggested that maybe I've forgotten that sometimes pregnancy can affect memory. I grabbed my purse and left because I was shaking so hard I could barely think straight. I drove home in a daze, feeling like my reality was cracking. Mark was in his office when I got there and I burst in saying, "Something insane just happened." He looked up from his computer and smiled. "Hey babe, what's wrong?" I told him everything about the DMV. The renewal I never did. The photo that looked exactly like me but wasn't. He frowned and said, "That's weird." But when I said someone was using my face, he suggested maybe I went and forgot because I'd been pretty stressed with the pregnancy. I didn't forget. I insisted, but he held up his hands and said we shouldn't get worked up, that it was probably just a system glitch. I wanted to believe him so badly. He promised to call them the next day and get it sorted out, but he never did. I know because I called back myself a week later and nothing had changed. As far as they were concerned, I had renewed my license in person with full biometric verification. I let it go because I thought maybe I was going crazy. Pregnancy brain. Right? Then it happened again. I was 9 months pregnant, a week from my due date, When I went to the bank to deposit a check from my freelance design work, the teller smiled at me and said, "Back again?" I was confused and said I hadn't been there. She looked at her computer and said, "Huh? Must have been someone else. You have a twin?" When I said no, she mentioned that she could have sworn I was just there yesterday making a withdrawal from my savings. My heart stopped. "What?" I asked, and she said, "Just made a withdrawal. From your savings. You don't remember?" I grabbed the counter to steady myself. "I didn't make any withdrawal," I said. But her face changed. "Ma'am," I processed it myself. "You showed ID and did the biometrics scan." When I asked what biometrics scan, she explained it was fingerprint and facial, their new security system. I felt like I was going to throw up. I demanded to see the transaction immediately. She pulled it up and showed me the details. Transaction date was yesterday at 2:47. Withdrawal of $15,000. Authorization by biometric verification confirmed. "Where did the money go?" I asked. "You took it in cash," she said. "But I was at my OB appointment at 2:47 p.m. yesterday and I had the paperwork in my car to prove it." I asked to see the security footage. The bank manager got involved and they made me wait in a small office while they pulled the video. When they finally showed it to me, I felt my reality completely crack. There I was, walking into the bank, heavily pregnant, wearing clothes I owned, smiling at the teller, putting my finger on a scanner, looking into a camera, taking an envelope of cash, and walking out. But I had never been there. I was at my doctor's appointment 40 minutes away at that exact time. "This isn't me," I whispered. But the bank manager looked at me like I was insane. "Mrs. Patterson, that is clearly you," he said. I called my OB right there and had them email me a time-stamped copy of my appointment check minus in. It showed to 35 p.m., 40 minutes away from the bank. The bank manager looked at the email, looked at the video, looked at me, and said, "This doesn't make sense. Someone is impersonating me." I told him, "This is fraud." They filed a report and froze my accounts and started an investigation. I called Mark from the parking lot and he came to meet me at the bank. When he saw the footage, his face went white and he said, "What the fuck?" It was the first time I'd seen him look genuinely shocked, and I actually felt a tiny bit of relief that he seemed as freaked out as I was. The bank investigation took 3 days and during that time I couldn't sleep at all. I kept thinking about the DMV, the bank, this person who looked exactly like me. How was this even possible? I started Googling things like biometric spoofing, facial recognition hacking, and synthetic identity fraud. I went down this whole rabbit hole and learned that you can create fake fingerprints using high-resolution scans and 3D printing. That AI can now replicate someone's face with 99% accuracy using just photos, and that voice cloning takes about 3 seconds of audio. I started feeling physically sick thinking about it. Someone had my biometrics, all of them. The bank called on day 4 and told me the fraud investigation concluded that the biometric verification was legitimate. As far as their system could tell, it was really me, so they couldn't refund the money. But I have proof I was somewhere else. I yelled into the phone, but they said their security system was designed to prevent exactly this kind of claim and the biometric match was 99.7%, which was higher than their threshold for absolute certainty. So someone just stole $15,000 from me and you're not going to do anything? I asked, but all they said was they'd filed a police report on my behalf. I hung up and started sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. Mark found me on the bathroom floor and held me while I cried. "We'll get through this," he said. "We'll figure it out." I asked how and he said he didn't know, but we'd find out. He seemed genuinely upset and I believed him. God, I'm such an idiot. The baby came a week later. My daughter Emma was perfect, 8 pounds 2 ounces. and Mark cried when he held her. His mother and sister came to the hospital with flowers and a stuffed elephant. They cooed over Emma and said she had my eyes and Mark's nose. They seemed so happy, so normal. I was in the hospital for 2 days, and on the second day, a nurse came in looking confused. "Mrs. Patterson, did you already fill out the birth certificate paperwork?" she asked. I told her no. I was waiting for my husband to get back, and she frowned. "That's strange. We have a completed form here with your signature." My blood went cold. "Let me see it," I demanded. She showed me, and it was my signature perfect, but I hadn't signed it. "When was this submitted?" I asked. "About an hour ago," she said. "A woman who said she was you dropped it off at the nurse's station." WHAT? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Someone impersonating me was HERE? In this hospital, the nurse stepped back and told me to calm down, but I demanded to see the other nurse who took the paperwork. She came in looking nervous, and I asked her to describe the woman. She looked like you. Same height, same hair. She was wearing a mask because of hospital policy, but I cut her off and asked if she checked ID. No. She said she was just dropping off paperwork for her baby. "It's not unusual," the nurse explained. I looked at Mark, and he looked as freaked out as I felt. "We need security footage," he said. The hospital pulled it, and there she was again, walking through the maternity ward, wearing clothes similar to mine. Same body type, same walk, face covered by a medical mask, dropping off paperwork and leaving. The hospital security couldn't identify her, but the security officer noted that she knew exactly where to go, walking right to the nurse's station like she'd been there before. I felt like I was living in an actual nightmare. Someone was following me, watching me, copying me. But who and why? Mark insisted we file another police report, and we did. But the police were completely useless. They basically said that without clear video identification or witnesses, there wasn't much they could do. One officer even had the nerve to suggest that maybe I was just confused because I'd just given birth and hormones can affect memory. I wanted to scream. We took Emma home, and I barely slept at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that woman walking through the hospital using my signature. Mark's mother came over the next day to help, and she brought groceries, made dinner, and held Emma while I tried to nap. "You look exhausted," she said. And when I told her someone was stalking me, someone who looked exactly like me, she gave me this pitying, concerned look. "Honey, are you sure you're not just stressed? New baby, the hormones, postpartum can make you feel paranoid," she said. I insisted I wasn't paranoid and that there was video evidence, but she said video can be misleading and suggested I needed rest. Then she offered to take care of Emma that night. Something in my gut screamed at me to say no, so I did. Her smile faltered for just a second, and she asked, "No?" I told her I needed Emma close, and something flickered in her eyes, just for a second, before the smile was back. "Of course. Whatever you need," she said. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. 2 weeks later, I got a call from my credit card company about unusual activity on my account. Several large purchases totaling $25,000 had been in mad. 25,000 had been made, 8,000 at a jewelry store, 12,000 at an La CTR, Wanix store, on day, 12,000 at an electronics store, and a 5,000 cash advance. I told them I didn't make any of those purchases, but they said they had biometric confirmation at point of sale. "When?" I asked. "Over the past week," they said. "I haven't left my house in a week. I have a newborn," I explained. They started an investigation, and it was the same story all over again. Biometric verification, facial recognition, fingerprint scans, all confirmed to be me. But I had never left my house and my neighbors could verify it. My Ring doorbell could verify it. But the store's security system said otherwise. I started keeping a detailed journal of every time I left the house, every purchase I made, every place I went. I documented everything with timestamps, receipts, and photos. Mark thought I was becoming obsessive. "Babe, you need to relax," he said. But I told him someone was using my identity. "I know. But stressing about it isn't helping," he replied. "What am I supposed to do?" I asked, and he just sighed and said to let the police handle it. But the police weren't handling shit. So I started doing my own research. I learned about how biometrics can be stolen and spoofed. And I realized that whoever was doing this needed access to high-quality photos of me, fingerprint scans, and voice recordings. I thought about all the times I'd unlocked my phone with my face, used my fingerprint, sent voice memos. I thought about all the photos Mark had taken of me over the years. Thousands of them on his phone. Videos of me talking, laughing, crying. He had access to my phone, my laptop. My fingerprints were literally on everything in our house. Then this terrible thought crept into my mind: what if it was Mark? But that was crazy, right? Mark loved me. He wouldn't do that to me. But the thought wouldn't leave my mind. I started watching him, really watching him. I noticed the way he'd grab his phone when I came into the room, the way he'd close his laptop quickly, the way he'd have quiet conversations with his mother that would stop when I walked in. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was postpartum anxiety and lack of sleep. But then Rebecca came over for dinner and she was being weird. Too nice, too interested in how I was coping. She said Mark told her I'd been stressed. When I mentioned someone was stealing my identity, she said, "Right, that must be so scary." But the way she said it, like she didn't believe me, made my skin crawl. I told her it was scary and she said, "Of course. I just mean, sometimes our minds play tricks on us. Especially after having a baby." I put down my fork and repeated, "My mind isn't playing tricks." She backtracked and said she wasn't saying that, just that maybe some of this was exaggerated. Mark cut in and said Rebecca was just worried about me. That they all were. They all were. Like I was the problem. Like I was crazy. I excused myself to go to the bathroom and, when I was in the hallway, I heard them talking in the kitchen in quiet voices. I crept back and listened. "She's getting worse," Rebecca said. Mark agreed and she asked if I'd seen anyone. "She won't. She thinks the identity theft is real," Mark said. "Mark, you need to get her help," Rebecca insisted. "I'm trying," he replied. They were talking about me like I was delusional. Like none of this was real. I went back to the table and finished dinner in complete silence. After Rebecca left, Mark tried to talk to me and said he thought I should see someone, a therapist for postpartum depression. I told him I didn't have postpartum depression. I had someone stealing my fucking identity. But he said, "I know you believe that," and I cut him off. "I don't believe it. It's ICHPP. An ING. He looked at me with these sad eyes and said, "Please, for me, for Emma, just talk to someone." I stared at this man I loved, this man I trusted, and I realized he didn't believe me. "Fine," I said. "I'll call someone tomorrow." But I didn't call a therapist. Instead, I started digging for real proof that I wasn't crazy. I filed a FOIA request for all the security footage from the bank, the DMV, anywhere I had supposedly been. I hired a private investigator named Martinez, a former cop, and it cost me $3,000 I didn't have, but I needed answers. I showed Martinez everything: the videos, the transactions, the timeline. He listened without judgment and said, "This is sophisticated." When I asked if he could help me, he said he could try. But if someone really had my biometrics, it would be hard to prove it wasn't me. "So, what do?" I asked. We find out who's doing it. Follow the money. See where these transactions led, he explained. He started investigating while things at home got progressively worse. Mark's mother started coming over every single day to help with the baby, but she watched me constantly and wrote things down in a little notebook. When I asked what she was writing, she claimed she was just making notes for herself because she was getting forgetful in her old age. Bullshit. She was documenting me. I could feel it. Rebecca started showing up unannounced too, saying she just wanted to see her niece. But she'd stay for hours, watching me. Both of them would exchange these knowing, concerned looks like I was a problem they were managing. One night I was feeding Emma at 3 a.m. while Mark was asleep, and I heard something downstairs. I froze and listened. Footsteps. Someone was in my house. I put Emma in her crib as quietly as I could, grabbed my phone, and opened the bedroom door. The footsteps stopped. Hello? I called out, but there was no response. I went downstairs and checked everything. The front door was locked. The back door was locked. All the windows were closed. But I HEARD someone. I checked the Ring camera footage and there was nothing. No one had come in. No one had left. But I heard footsteps clear as day. I went back upstairs and Mark was awake. What's wrong? He asked. I told him I heard someone downstairs and he got up and checked the whole house. There's no one here. Babe, he said. When I insisted I heard footsteps, he suggested maybe it was the house settling or I was half asleep. I wasn't asleep, I said. But he put his hands on my shoulders and said, You're exhausted. You're not sleeping. You're seeing things that aren't there. I'm not, I started, but he cut me off. Please, talk to someone, a professional. There it was again, that sad, pitying look, like I was broken. The next day, Susan cornered me in the kitchen and said Mark told her what happened the night before. What did he tell you? I asked. That you thought someone broke in, she said. When I told her I heard someone, she took my hand and said, Sweetheart, there was no one there. She told me she was worried about me, that they all were that phrase again. And then she said something that made my blood run cold. What if you hurt yourself? Or Emma? I asked what she was talking about and she said, Postpartum psychosis is real and dangerous. I started to protest, but she cut me off. You're hearing things. Seeing things? You think people are following you. You need help, sweetheart. Before something terrible happens. She squeezed my hand and it felt like a threat. I pulled away and said, I was fine. Are you? She asked. That night I couldn't sleep at all. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about postpartum psychosis. Was I crazy? Was all of this in my head? No, I had evidence, video, transactions, biometric confirmations. Unless I was doing these things and not remembering. Unless my brain was broken. No, I couldn't let them make me doubt myself. I grabbed my laptop and pulled up my bank statements. The $15,000 withdrawal had been moved through 3 different accounts and then into a business account for a company I'd never heard of, Sullivan X Solutions. I Googled it and found it was an LLC registered in Delaware. I dug deeper and discovered that the business owner's name was listed as me. My name, my social security number, but I had never registered a business in my life. I kept digging and found that this company had contracts, employees, and revenue in the millions, all in my name, and I had no idea it even existed. I felt like I was going to throw up. Someone had created an entire company using my identity. I called Martinez immediately and told him about Sullivan X Solutions. I need you to investigate this company, I said. When I explained everything, he was quiet for a long moment before saying, This is bigger than identity theft. Someone is running a full shadow operation using your identity. This is fraud, money laundering, possibly more. I asked who would do that and he said, Someone with access to all your information. Someone close to you. I thought of Mark, but I didn't want to believe it. Then I thought about his mother who worked in banking, his sister who worked in tech, and Mark who was a software engineer specializing in security systems and biometric authentication. Oh my God. I need to get into my husband's computer, I told Martinez. Be careful, he warned. I waited until Mark went to play basketball with his friends, a Sunday afternoon routine where he'd be gone for 3 hours. Emma was in her bouncer and I went to his office. His laptop was password protected, but I knew his passwords because he used the same one for everything. I logged in and started searching his files. Most of it was work stuff, code, emails, documents. But then I found a hidden, encrypted folder. I knew his encryption key because he'd told me once when he was drunk that he used Emma's birthday for everything important. I typed it in and the folder opened. Inside were hundreds of files, photos of me, thousands of them from every angle and every expression. Photos I didn't even know existed. Videos of me sleeping. Videos of me in the shower. Videos of me walking around the house. I felt physically sick. Then I found another folder labeled biometric assets and opened it. Inside were 3D scans of my face from every angle, measurements, depth maps, texture files. There were audio files of my voice, thousands of clips of isolated words, phrases, and sounds. And there were fingerprints, high-resolution scans of all 10 of my fingers. I sat back in the chair, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Mark had stolen my biometrics. My own husband. But why? I kept searching and found another folder labeled Dest E-Solutions, which was Sullivan X Solutions. Inside work contracts, financial statements, and employee records. The company was real and it was making millions through government contracts, tech consulting, and security services, all using my identity as the owner. But Mark was listed as CTO, Chief Technology Officer. His mother was CFO and his sister was head of operations. They were running a company in my name, using my stolen biometrics to sign contracts, open accounts, and move money. I felt like I was falling into an abyss. This wasn't random identity theft. This was my family. My husband, his mother, his sister. They had planned this, all of it. I kept digging and found emails between Mark and his mother. The facial scans are ready. We can start phase 2. Make sure she doesn't notice. Keep her calm. The pregnancy is perfect timing. She'll be too distracted. I couldn't breathe. There was another email from Rebecca. We need to be careful. She's starting to notice. Mark's response, I'll handle it. Just stick to the plan. Susan wrote if she becomes a problem, we move to plan B. What was plan B? I searched for more and found a document titled Contingency Protocol. I opened it and my vision blurred as I read. It outlined their plan if I became aware of the operation Gaslight Me. Suggest postpartum mental health issues. Document erratic behavior. Build a case for psychiatric intervention. And if necessary, pursue emergency custody of Emma. Once I was declared mentally unfit, they would maintain guardianship and continue the operation. They had planned this, all of it. The gaslighting, the concerned looks, the suggestions that I was crazy. They were building a case to take Emma, to declare me unfit so they could keep running their fraud operation without me interfering. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't because if I confronted them now, they'd just accelerate the plan. I needed proof. I needed to be smart. I copied everything, every single file, every email, every document, and uploaded it all to a cloud account they couldn't access. Then I deleted my traces and closed the laptop. I sat there holding Emma, my daughter, the child they wanted to take from me. My husband, the man who promised to love and protect me, was running a criminal enterprise using my identity and planning to destroy me if I got in the way. I called Martinez and told him I had everything. He was silent for a long time before saying, Jesus Christ. I asked what I should do and he said, we go to the FBI. Will they believe me? I asked. With this evidence? Yes. But you need to be careful. If your husband finds out, you know. He could accelerate their plan, Martinez warned. I asked if I could act normal for a few more days and he said, "Can you?" "I have to," I replied. He said he'd set up a meeting with the FBI and told me not to tell anyone and not to let on that I knew. "Okay," I said and hung up. Mark came home an hour later, sweaty from basketball and smiling. "How are my girls?" he asked, kissing Emma's head and then kissing me. I wanted to throw up, but I smiled back. "Good. We're good," I said. "You seem better," he observed. And I told him I thought I was just tired. His face lit up. Yeah, I think you were right. I need to take care of myself," I said. He hugged me tightened over his shoulder. I stared at the wall and planned my revenge. The next 3 days were the hardest of my life. I had to act completely normal, smile at Mark, let Susan hold Emma, have coffee with Rebecca, all while knowing what they'd done and what they were planning to do. Susan kept pushing for me to see a therapist, saying she found someone wonderful and very understanding. "I'll think about it," I said. "Don't wait too long, sweetheart." "For Emma's sake," she replied. The threat was crystal clear. Rebecca started bringing up custody arrangements, saying that if I ever needed help, Mark's family would step in. "Step in?" I asked. "Just to help. With the baby. If you were struggling," she clarified. "I'm not struggling," I said firmly. "Of course not. I'm just saying we're here for you," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. They were circling like sharks, getting ready to move. I met with the FBI on day 3. Martinez came with me, and I brought Emma because I didn't trust leaving her with Mark's family. The agents' names were Morrison and Chen, and they listened to everything and looked at all the evidence I'd gathered. "This is substantial," Morrison said. I asked if they could help me, and they said they could investigate. But they needed to do this carefully because if they moved too fast, the family would destroy evidence. "What do I do?" I asked. "Go home. Act normal. We'll start building our case," Morrison instructed. "How long will that take?" "A few weeks," he said. "I don't have weeks. They're trying to take my baby," I protested. Chen spoke up then. "We understand, but if we arrest them now, a good lawyer could get them off. We need to catch them in the act. Catch them using your biometrics. Trace the money." I wanted to scream, but I understood. I went home feeling like I was walking into a trap. That night, Mark suggested I see his mother's therapist friend who supposedly had an opening the next day. "Tomorrow?" I asked. "Yeah, I already made you an appointment," he said casually. He'd made an appointment without even asking me. Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled. "Great. It'll be good for you." I went to the appointment the next day because I had no choice. I had to keep up the act. The therapist's name was Drive Reeves, a woman in her 50s with a kind face and soft voice. "Tell me what's been going on," she said. I knew this was a trap, but I had to play along. I told her about the stress, the new baby, the sleepless nights, but I didn't mention the identity theft directly. But she brought it up anyway. "Mark mentioned you've been having some paranoid thoughts," she said. My stomach dropped. "Did he?" I said flatly. "About someone impersonating you?" she continued. I told her that wasn't paranoia. It was really happening, but she just wrote something down and asked me to tell her about it. I told her carefully about the DMV, the bank, the evidence, and she listened with that same pitying expression I'd seen from Susan and Rebecca. "That must be very frightening," she said. "It is," I agreed. "Have you considered that these might be intrusive thoughts related to postpartum anxiety?" she suggested. When I insisted there was video evidence, she said. "Video can be misinterpreted when we're in a heightened state of anxiety." I wanted to walk out right then, but I forced myself to smile and say, "Maybe you're right." She talked for 40 minutes about hormones and anxiety and psychosis, and I nodded along like a good patient. At the end, she recommended medication for the intrusive thoughts and said she'd like to see me twice a week. Okay, I said, agreeing to everything. I left and called Morrison immediately from my car. They're building a case that I'm mentally ill, I told him. We expected that. Stay the course, he said. I can't do this much longer, I admitted. You have to. We're close, he insisted. I went home and found Susan there with Emma, alone. Where's Mark? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. He had to run to the office. I told him I'd watch Emma, she said, smiling at me while holding my daughter. How was your appointment? She asked. Fine, I said shortly. Dr. Reeves is wonderful? Isn't she? Susan said. Sure, I replied. She called me, actually. She's concerned about you, Susan added. Of course she did. They were all in on it. I took Emma from her arms, maybe a bit too forcefully. I need to feed her, I said and went upstairs, locking the bedroom door behind me. I called Martinez in a panic. They're moving faster. The therapist is in on it, I told him. Fuck, he muttered. What do I do? I asked desperately. Emma started crying and I was crying too. Okay. Here's what we do. We force their hand, Martinez said. How? I asked. We make them think you're about to expose them. See how they react. The FBI can record it, he explained. That's dangerous, I said. It's the only way to speed this up, he replied. I thought about it, about my daughter, about the life they were trying to steal from me. Okay, what do I do? I asked. Martinez and the FBI set everything up over the next 2 days. They wired my house with cameras and microphones and planted recording devices in my phone. Then I confronted Mark. It was a Saturday and Susan and Rebecca were coming for dinner, which was perfect timing. I waited until they were all there, sitting in my living room, playing with Emma, acting like a normal family. I walked in with a folder containing copies of all the evidence I'd found. We need to talk, I said. Mark looked up casually. About what? He asked. I dropped the folder on the coffee table with a loud thud. About Sullivan executions, I said. The room went completely silent. Susan's face went white. Rebecca froze mid-minus motion. And Mark's expression didn't change at all, which was almost more disturbing. What are you talking about? He asked calmly. The company you created in my name using my stolen biometrics, I said, my voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Honey, I think you're confused, Mark started, but I cut him off. I found everything, Mark. On your computer, the face scans, the fingerprints, the voice recordings, the contracts, all of it. Susan stood up quickly. Mark, what is she talking about? She asked, playing her part perfectly. Such a good actress. I don't know, Mom. She's been having these episodes, Mark said, shaking his head sadly. IPISODS? You stole my face, my fingerprints, my voice. You created a fake version of me to commit fraud. Rebecca stepped forward with her hands out. You need to calm down. You're not thinking clearly, she said in that condescending tone I'd grown to hate. I'm thinking perfectly clearly, I said. You're sick. The postpartum depression, Mark started, but I interrupted. I'm not sick. You're CRIMIMALS. Susan moved toward me. Listen to yourself. You sound paranoid, she said. Because you've been GASLIGHTING me, I shouted. Mark stood up and moved toward me with his hands out. Babe, please, sit down. Let's talk about this calmly. We are talking about it, I said, backing away from him. You're not safe with Emma right now, Mark said, changing tactics. Give me the baby. No, I said firmly, holding Emma closer. You're not safe. Why, you are the one who's been committing fraud, I said. Rebecca pulled out her phone. I'm calling 911th, She's having a breakdown, she announced. Go ahead, I said, my heart pounding. Call them. I have evidence. I have everything. Mark's expression finally changed. The mask slipped for just a second and I saw pure rage in his eyes. You went through my computer, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Your computer that you used to steal my identity? I shot back. He took another step toward me and his whole demeanor shifted. Give me the baby, he said, no longer pretending to be concerned. No, I said. GIVMETHEBABY. He shouted and lunged at me. I ran, clutching Emma to my chest, running up the stairs as fast as I could. I got into Emma's room and locked the door behind me. Mark pounded on it violently. Open the door, he screamed. I could hear Susan on the phone downstairs, her voice panicked and dramatic. Yes, we need help. My daughter Law is having a psychotic break. She has the baby. We're afraid she'll hurt her. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone, but I managed to call 911 myself. My husband and his family are trying to take my baby. They've been committing identity fraud. I have evidence. Please send help, I said as calmly as I could manage. The door shook as Mark hit it again and again. OPENTHEFUCKINGDOOR, he screamed, all pretense of the loving husband completely gone. I heard sirens getting closer and I sent up a silent prayer of thanks. The police arrived within minutes, and so did the FBI. Morrison and Chen had been waiting nearby, ready for this exact scenario. They arrested Mark first while he was still screaming that I was crazy and going to hurt the baby. Morrison showed him the warrant and said, Mark Patterson, you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy. His face went completely slack with shock. Susan tried to run out the back door, but Chen caught her easily. Susan Patterson, you're also under arrest, Chen said as she handcuffed her. Rebecca broke down crying and begging, saying she didn't know anything, that they made her do it. But I'd seen the emails. She knew everything. They took all three of them away, in separate police cars while I sat in Emma's room, still holding my daughter, shaking uncontrollably. It was over, or at least I thought it was. But it wasn't. Not really. The next few weeks were an absolute nightmare in a different way. Mark's lawyer tried to paint me as an unreliable witness and attempted to use the therapy sessions against me. She was diagnosed with postpartum psychosis, his lawyer argued in court. But the FBI had the evidence, mountains of it. The biometric scans on Mark's computer, the shell companies, the fraudulent contracts, the money trail that showed over $4 million had been stolen using my identity. They'd been doing it for months, starting when I got pregnant, using my distraction to build their entire operation. And when I started noticing things didn't add up, they tried to destroy me and take everything. The therapist, Dr. Reeves, lost her license. She'd been feeding information to Susan, part of the conspiracy the whole time. The trial took 6 months and all three of them pleaded not guilty, claiming I was a willing participant who changed my mind and was trying to destroy them out of spite. But the jury didn't believe them. The evidence was too clear, too damning. The recordings from my house of Mark screaming at me to give him the baby, Susan calling 911 to report me as psychotic, Rebecca's emails discussing their plan B if I became a problem. They were convicted, all of them. Mark got 12 years for identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy. Susan got 10 years. Rebecca got 8 years. They're appealing, but they'll lose because the evidence is overwhelming. I have full custody of Emmy and Mark has no parental rights whatsoever. His name isn't even on her birth certificate anymore. I had it changed. She's mine, only mine. I'm in the process of legally changing my identity completely. New name, new social security number, rebuilding my biometric profiles from scratch. The FBI helped me with it, a process similar to federal witness protection, because my face, my fingerprints, my voice are all compromised now. They're floating out there on the dark web somewhere. For sale, thanks to my husband. I had to get subtle reconstructive work done on my face, just enough to fool facial recognition systems. I had to alter my fingerprints, which is apparently possible but incredibly painful. I even worked with a vocal coach to change my speech patterns. I'm not the same person anymore, literally. The woman Mark married doesn't exist. He killed her when he stole her identity and tried to destroy her life. And I became someone new, someone harder, someone who will never trust blindly again. Emma is 2 now and she doesn't remember any of it. Thank God. She'll never know her father or her grandmother or her aunt. I'll tell her one day when she's old enough to understand. I'll tell her about the family who tried to destroy us, who saw us as nothing more than tools and assets to be exploited. Mark wrote me from prison once, just one letter. I almost threw it away without reading it, but morbid curiosity got the better of me. He said he was sorry, that he loved me, that he did it for us and our future, that he never meant for it to go so far. It was all bullshit. He meant every second of it. He planned it all with his mother and sister. They saw an opportunity when I got pregnant, a way to use my identity for massive profit. And when I started to notice, they tried to take everything from me, my sanity, my daughter, my entire life. I burned the letter. I haven't heard from him since. Susan sends cards sometimes. Birthday cards and Christmas cards addressed to Emma. I burned those too without opening them. Rebecca tried to friend me on social media under a fake name, but I reported her and got a restraining order. They're cut off forever, and that's exactly how it needs to be. Sometimes I wonder if I should feel sorry for them. They're in prison, their lives completely destroyed, their reputations ruined. But then I remember the look on Susan's face when she held Emma, calculating, uncold, already planning how to take her from me. I remember Mark's voice when he screamed, "Give me the baby." Not with concern but with threatened rage. I remember Rebecca's emails casually discussing what to do if she becomes a problem, like I was an obstacle to be removed rather than a human being. They never loved me. I was never family to them. I was a mark, a target, a convenient tool with good credit and a trusting nature. And when the tool became aware and started asking questions, they tried to destroy it completely. So no, I don't feel sorry for them at all. I sleep well at night knowing they're in cells, knowing they lost everything, knowing I won. Because that's what this is. Really. It was a war and I'm the only one left standing. People ask me sometimes how I'm doing, how I'm coping, if I'm getting therapy. I smile and say I'm fine. And I actually am. I'm better than fine. I'm free. Free from a family that never loved me. Free from a husband who saw me as a resource to exploit. Free from the gaslighting and manipulation and constant fear. I have Emma and I have a new identity and a new life. And I have the deep satisfaction of knowing that the people who tried to destroy me are rotting in prison for the next decade. That's enough. More than enough. If you're reading this and you think you're going crazy, if your family is telling you you're paranoid, if things keep happening that you can't explain, trust your gut. You're not crazy. Document everything, save everything, back everything up somewhere safe. Because the people closest to you can be the most dangerous. The people who smile at you over dinner, who hold your baby, who promise to help and support you, they can be the ones planning to destroy you. And you need to be ready. I wasn't ready at first and I almost lost everything. But I fought back and I won. Him is asleep in the other room right now. She's safe. She's healthy. She's mine. And no one will ever take her from me. No one will ever use me again. I rebuilt myself from nothing. Literally creating a new identity, a new face, a new life. The woman Mark married is dead. He killed her, but someone stronger rose from the ashes. Someone who knows exactly what people are capable of. Someone who will never be a victim again. That's my story. That's what happened when my husband, his mother, and his sister stole my face and tried to steal my life. They thought they could use me and throw me away. They thought I'd break under the pressure, that I'd be declared insane and institutionalized, while they kept running their fraud empire. They were wrong. I'm still here. They're not. And that's all that matters. Sweet dreams, Mark. I hope prison is everything you deserve and more.